Hello and welcome to On the Bench. I am Brendan Sonnone. I'm joined by Chris Nee and only Chris Nee today. Chris, it's been a while since it's been you and I, but I think people like it when it's us just talking shop. I think
Football's back.
football is back. It's August 1st as we're recording this. FSU is 2 days into preseason camp. Maybe by the time you're listening to this, 3 days in. We're less than a month away. I am caffeinated. Jeremiah Wilson is not, which is just crazy. Less than a month away until Alabama in the season opener. So man, it's here. Before we get going, let's give a shout out to our sponsors. I got to try Chattanooga Whiskey's limoncello. I think limoncello. I think it's limoncello. If it there's an limoncello. Sorry, Chattanooga Whiskey. Limoncello finished in bourbon cask. Zach had it. He brought it up to Tallahassee when he was here earlier in the week for the coaches luncheon to kind of preview preseason camp, and I drank it. I would say that's not normally like my cup of tea, cup of alcohol, but I had a sip and I was like, good for them. Like it was legitimately drinking a lime Skittle. You can get drunk off Skittles, basically. And I thought it was really good. It had a nice amount of proof and heft to it. It wasn't for the faint of heart, but it was also easy drinking at the same time. That's the cool thing about Chattanooga whiskeys. They try different things, and sometimes they just hit an absolute grand slam like this one. This has been uh, a bottle a lot of people have wanted, and good for them. Support everything they do. Their entry level bourbon, their high proof 111 is really good. Do all sorts of really cool stuff as well. So we love having them as a sponsor. And speaking of the limoncello bourbon, or finished in bourbon cask, Colin Turner also got a bottle, his hands on a bottle as well. So it was again really well received, and everyone was looking out for it. So not only does Colin have a exquisite palate, he also can help you, buy, sell homes in Central Florida. That's who we'd send you to. Actually, throughout the state of Florida, is well connected, even up here in Tallahassee. Zach can attest to. He's gotten some good leads lately. So if you're in the market, you're thinking about it, even Colin Turner, Amy Turner is where we would have you go. All right, Chris. Preseason camp is here. We got a small window to kind of see what's what. First off, man, the football only facility is coming along. It's delayed a little bit with the move-in part, but like just being there, seeing the multiple fields, there's new turf, uh, vibes. Like, just would it feel like being there? It's kind of like omnipresent. It's massive.
Yeah, it is. It's an impressive thing that they've done there. It's obviously still getting the inner workings done as we're speaking, which is why the opening of it will be uh, delayed is the word I was told I'm not supposed to use on it, but it's why the opening will be a little bit later in the season than originally expected.
What word are you supposed to use?
I don't know, but it was not really described as delayed. But
Is this like when the Panhandle defensive end canceled his official visit? They're just like, yeah, he rescheduled it and he
yeah,
committed.
yeah. It will open at some date during the football season. As far as the three fields, the one observation I had is that the material, so one's natural grass outside, there's obviously field turf inside the IPF, and then this new turf that's over by the new football facility, the shorter field. I think that is either wood or cork after talking to some people, while the one inside, I believe, is tire bits or rubber, and then obviously natural grass. So you got three different surfaces. I found that kind of interesting to a degree. I don't know if there's really any reason for that other than technology evolving and developing as you've done the three fields.
They were kind of not sliding around, but they were talking about having to be very mindful of their footing with that new the cork or wood based one. Do you think Chattanooga whiskey, maybe their corks, possibly? There could be something there. Could be a practice
I
field
couldn't
sponsor.
smell the aroma, but maybe the Florida heat took it out of it.
It was just muggy. So yeah, it was cool being in there and kind of seeing again. It's a different feeling, very enclosed and cool, and a very what they're building there is impressive, no doubt about that. Let's talk about the team. I don't want to get on here, man, and have a bunch of like hyperbolic takes. We saw
You
20
didn't
minutes.
take a ton from 19 minutes of being out there?
I feel like I would be a little disingenuous if I said
Yeah,
I
I
did.
agree.
Um,
I mean, the basics is often. So I'm shooting photos all the time. We're doing that. So obviously, I'm watching it through the lens for the most part. Um, Offensively, it goes fast. The goal is to move very quickly. A lot of very quick throw type of stuff going on. None of that is a surprise if you ever watch a Gus Malzahn on offense. Kromah grabs your attention just physically, like when he was standing with his fellow running backs, waiting for their portions of going into the offensive sets. He just stands out. He's a big kid. Obviously, the legs are kind of bow-legged, so that makes it pretty easy to identify which one of the half dozen backs is Kromah. It was good to see the offensive line in general looks to be healthy. That was an issue during the spring as far as having the 5 that you intend to be your 5 all together all the time. That didn't happen a ton over 13 practices in the spring. That's a good progress thing. Wide receiver, I think it's going to be a fun battle to see if LaWayne McCoy or Jayvan Boggs is their third guy when they roll out there. I think Deuce and Squirrel are pretty solidified as the first two. I think those are the next two up. Boggs obviously continues to get high praise from a variety of people. Jeremiah Wilson, for example, yesterday just keeps heaping it on his boy Wade Boggs.
Can we stop there real quick? And
Sure.
I'm going to find the quotes. I just wrote a quick story on it. But, this is the second time that Jeremiah Wilson has talked about Jayvan Boggs really highly. The first time was back in May. He gave him the Wade Boggs treatment, which was pretty cool. But he was asked about it yesterday. He said, I'm going to double back on what I said, and 15 is cold. Jayvan Boggs. Keep watching. He's going to be something serious. He's a pro. His hands are pro. He's got a pro body. He's got a pro mindset. Deuce Robinson also was really, really, really complimentary, saying that he might be the best wide receiver in football one day. Buy or Sonone, sponsored by
The Turner Group.
Are we buying that level of hype on Jayvan Boggs right now?
I'm Sononing that level of hype because there's hyperbole there, but I am buying that. I think he's legitimately very likely to be their third receiver. And there's two reasons for that. One, I do think he's legitimately really good. I don't think those guys are BSing us. I think they're just gassing up a teammate a little bit in the same process, which is all well and good. I'm all for that. And I think he's earned a lot of that with his play and performances through 13 spring practices and now what he's done in the off season when they've worked together and now obviously 2 days in. The other reason I'm on the side of it is worth a buy, but I'm not buying it because I don't think it's that level, is that he was handpicked by Gus Malzahn. Malzahn wanted him at UCF. He was a guy he quickly identified and wanted at FSU. There's a degree of he bought his own groceries, and that's a guy who is part of his groceries, and he wants him to be his guy. Now, I think LaWayne McCoy will compete and be the next guy who possibly can grab that spot out of a group of a lot of young guys like a BJ Gibson, Elijah Moore, so on and so forth. I think LaWayne's the first guy up among that group. But do I think Boggs is going to play a lot and pretty early? Heck yeah. I'm definitely in that boat. And I really left the spring in that boat just the way that pretty much throughout the program, coaches, players, observers who have an opportunity to observe quite often all were extremely high on what Boggs had done over 13 days of work.
I think so. Right now, the way it would work for people who are interested in getting into the weeds here, so some will be. Deuce Robinson's going to be your 9 wide receiver. That's the on-ball guy generally. X, I think I always get those confused. And then Squirrel White's likely going to be your 2 wide receiver in Gus's scheme. That's the off-ball. There's a ton of jet motion stuff with him. And then you have the slot wide receiver, who is going to be kind of I don't think they're generally have to be a certain body type or skill set. The other two
Right.
have more specific built skill sets. I really like the idea of LaWayne McCoy there. He worked there a little bit in the open period that we saw. I wasn't sure if he'd be a 2 or a slot wide receiver for them, but really bouncy, just someone who it reminded me, because we didn't get to hear about him at all in the spring. He got hurt, had a hamstring pull or something like that, and he was just out for most of it.
Yeah, I think he missed about half of the spring, if I recall correctly. And he started well, from what I was told back in.
Yeah. He was someone that when we were at practice last year, man, was by far the most polished freshman wide receiver that they
Yeah,
had.
and he had some juice to him. He's got some after the catch stuff to his ability that you like.
Mm-hmm. So I like, it was kind of fun seeing him just run a couple routes and oh yeah, he's bouncy. I wouldn't be surprised if he ends up starting there. But Jayvan Boggs, yeah, I think you watch him run routes and it's powerful the way he moves. And that makes sense the way he's built. He's every bit of 200 pounds and thick framed. But apparently the hands are really sure-handed. I talked to one source about a week ago or so, and they said just even in the summer, just called him a silent assassin. He's not physically anything super unique. He just finds ways.
He's more quick out of cuts than he is just straight up fast. He ain't winning a track meet, but he also knows how to run routes and get himself open and create spaces, throw it in, and he's going to win the ball when it's thrown to him within reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's good. I think the biggest thing about Boggs, and people got to remember, we're measuring positionally these guys against each other within the position on the FSU roster. But I think the other thing with Boggs, you got to remember, he comes from Cocoa, good program, super productive high school kid, played a lot of football in high school. I think he's one of those who really felt comfortable when he stepped onto a college campus. I don't think there was some big leap or transition for that young man.
We got to meet his high school principal at ACC kickoff, right?
Yeah, I forget exactly where that gentleman fell in the order of Coco, but he's heavily tied to Coco. Very, very familiar with all
Yeah.
Coco talent.
And they spoke really highly of Jayvan just as a person, and that was cool. So that's one of the, it's an unknown. I mean, there's a ton of unknowns in this preseason. That's what 50 new players and new coordinators will do for you. But he's one of the variables that I find to be the kind of like a wild card. Like if that guy is able to contribute in a consistent capacity day one, that's your third wide receiver. The other wide receiver who might vie for reps in the slot would be Gavin Blackwell. He got a little dinged up, confirmed it was nothing super serious, but he's already kind of behind the curve a little bit there. So those are your three as we're trying to kind of just fill in the blanks and figure out, who's who goes where.
Yeah, and part of the reason Blackwell's a little bit behind for those unfamiliar is he was a later enrollee. He's one of those late takes in the summer window, basically.
What else? What else stood out to you there, Chris?
So, like, offensively, some of it's preconceived thought, but it's also what I thought exiting the spring. I feel like the first team idea of the offense is pretty well established. Like,
Yeah.
I don't go out there and some of that's new pieces they've included. Like at running back, I definitely think Sawchuck's going to fit into the situation there, even though they speak up on Roydell Williams. I think they went and got Gavin for a reason. And then we all know Kromah's a guy that they've invested upon, and he's plenty talented. He's also a guy that Mike Norvell has referenced multiple times in multiple interviews. I saw him more than maybe any high school prospect I ever saw, essentially. There's a degree of like, what you're getting plug and play wise. I'm interested mainly with running back room, just how much of it is a stable versus 1, 2, or maybe 3 at most type guys. I think they're going to try to get a little bit away from what it's been in past years in the sense of rotating there.
I tried to ask Gus about that. It was
and he said basically whatever helps us win and whoever's doing well. And he's used, like, looking back at the last 3 to 4 years of Gus's usage of running backs, it's been dictated sort of by, is there an alpha in the room? RJ Harvey became the alpha and became the primary back, but earlier in his career, he was basically part of a 3-man rushing attack. So there's a degree of kind of looking at it that way. I think with Kromah and the fact that he enrolled a little bit later, it's potentially more like the 3-person type of thing than simply one person taking over the role. But I am intrigued by it just because traditionally FSU's been a little bit more stable-minded in the sense of using multiple guys under Mike Norvell, and I think they may start kind of dialing back from that. It'll be interesting to see because a lot of bodies in that room, a lot of guys they speak highly of and are capable, but I think it's pretty clear there's sort of a tier system emerging among that bunch.
It reminds me of when Kenny Dillingham first got here. He was asked, I don't know why this sticks out to me, he was asked what his thoughts on running back rotation is, and he talked about wanting to kind of keep guys fresh. But then he got who's the guy at Arizona State last year?
Scatabo.
Scatabo. Thank you. I'm getting old. And he just you get a dude, and you keep riding it. So it is going to be dependent on that, and that's where this is going to be a really interesting stretch here. They get Shells on, I think, today, so it's day 3. Everything that we've heard with Kromah has been qualified. But we got to see what, once the pads are on, and we're about to get that data set. So that's gonna be interesting. One other thing on Kromah that I found interesting, Chris, was Coach Johnson the other day when he was speaking. I think it was Zach was interviewing him, and he was talking about Kromah, and obviously very excited, right? Like what running back coach wouldn't be? But he said I have to tell him that you're not here to save us, and that not alarms, but that perked my ears up. Because if someone's not here to save you, you don't have to say that. Or
right,
so if the expectation isn't super high, maybe.
But I think in the day and age of pay for play and what we're living with as far as how rosters are built, there's a degree of when a guy knows he's been invested in, who to a degree seems very invested in the game of football, which I would describe him as an individual who that's the way he conducts himself. I think there's a degree of maybe that puts a little bit of like loftier expectations upon your shoulders, which is a good trait because it means you're invested and you care. I think there might be a degree of like, hey, just go be a good running back, like be what you are and you're really capable of it. A comment that stuck out to me that I connected to Kromah, even though it wasn't directly about him, was Gavin Sawchuck when he spoke to us last evening on Thursday evening. He talked about the guys knows on offense, running backs catching the ball and being used in the passing game and wanting to work on that element of his game. I have long stood on the idea that I think Kromah most fit FSU out of his three primary schools because of the amount they throw the ball to the running backs or are willing to throw to the running backs. And the fact I think that's an area where he is unbelievably skilled and talented. He's excellent at cleaning up a football in the air. He plays almost naturally, kind of like a really big slot at times when he's playing downfield that way. So that's part of the reason I think he's got a real shot of being a major, major piece to what they want to do.
He had 1,500 receiving yards in his high school career, just about, and most of that came in the last 2 years. He averaged 21 yards a
It wasn't just catch it in space and go forward
right,
and be fast either. It was like go run a route, beat a guy, catch the ball, do something with it after you catch the ball.
The basketball background, I think, helps him there in terms of like spatial awareness, body, and we're starting to find out more and more that, like, yes, track times are important, but basketball background and pedigree is, if you're good at basketball, like that's a good skill that generally translates over to football. So another thing with Kromah is like why we're excited about him.
Yeah. Yeah, offensively, I just kind of feel like the picture is relatively clear. Like there's some depth battles going
Amari
on.
Williams at tight end for the first
Yeah.
periods.
So I don't think Landon Thomas was full go out of the gate. I don't think he's hurt per se. I just don't think he was going to rep at the level that's probably going to be normally his reps in a practice setting. So to a degree, I wondered if Amari was over there to be the third guy alongside Chase Lofton and Grenade as far as pass catching tight ends. You've got Biscuit, Marquiston Douglas, Bryson Estes now is working there, but they're blocking types. I'm talking more as a pass catcher type. I still think Amari fits into the defensive idea more than the offensive idea for what this roster is. But I think there's intention to play him on both sides of the ball during the season. And nobody's really walked away from that when talking on it on either side of the ball or including the head coach.
Where do you think he'll get more snaps? Buy or Sonone, more snaps. Oh, Buy or Sonone, sponsored by.
I'm going to buy on defense. I think defensive side of ball is where his value is going to be needed more this year. I think there's value to him on offense in the sense of like he's an athletic kid who gets down the field and does a good job catching the ball. He had 2 touchdowns, if I recall correctly, last year, I believe.
Mm-hmm. That's correct.
There's just a degree of like you need to have that. You need to have guys who can light up the scoreboard. That's half the battle. So I think he'll get used there, but I think they feel really good about the top 3 pass catching ones in Grenade, Landon Thomas, and Chase Lofton. So there's a degree of you have guys that satisfy your needs there. I think Amari's juice on defense and what he can do, whether as like a speed rush end or a jack or however he's going to fit into the idea of the front 6-7 for the defense. I think that's where his value might be more needed because I think he's a little bit more unique to what they have as far as the depth on that. They have a lot of big body defensive linemen and obviously a lot of linebackers. They don't have a lot of guys that kind of fit that in between of the two as much as I think Amari does.
So let's talk about defense. You mentioned offense. You felt like you have a pretty clear pick. Defense, which is weird because there's more guys returning on defense.
Secondary, feel good. In front of it, I have an idea of the guys who I think they rely upon, but where they end up lining up, what it ends up looking like, what is the base versus what is sort of like the package they love going to because it's what they're really good at. That is all the one, we haven't seen it because we've been closed out. And 2, I think some of that is still being figured out. Watching the linebacker group, like, Stephon Thompson, he knows what he's doing in his defense. And I thought he also looked like he was in excellent shape, truthfully, going into camp. And I only make so much out of what the body looks like, but I thought Stephon looked better than when he got here in the spring. It's what I'm weighing that against. You got Blake Nicholson, who we all know is very athletic. We need him to be the version of linebacker he was recruited to be, and this is sort of a leap year for him where it's pretty important. Juice Cryer, coach on the field, mean that in every loving way. Also a good football player who ends plays really well. Elijah Herring, similar end play ender, Mike linebacker type who could also be a Jack type for them or Sam type. I think it will be interesting to see. I think Elijah is a piece that you sort of set first, and then the other things start falling in around it. Omar Graham Jr., someone they've spoken of highly about consistently dating back to the spring. He did finish last year far better than he started last year, though he had nowhere to go but up. And Yeah, I think he's a guy that, as of now, I would kind of pencil in as someone who I think they intend to start. I think they're going into the preseason with the thought process of he's on a top line. But I feel like there's 5, 6 guys among that group that they're going to figure it out from. And some of it, who fits what role the best to give us the best version of the defense we want to play against that opponent or in that moment.
They're going to
And then,
play 5 as well for at
yeah.
least I think every single game you'll see at least 5, if not 6.
Yeah, and Mike talking about roles and maximizing them, like, there's a degree of that also fits the offense because some of the H-back tight end stuff they do, some of what they do with their running backs, but I took that to mean much more about the defense, and some guys are this and some guys are that, and it's gonna depend upon the opponent and what we're trying to execute here defensively on a week-to-week basis. I don't think the defense is gonna be kind of cookie cutter where we see the same thing line up relatively consistently week to week. I don't think it's going to be that.
Daryl Jackson at ACC kickoff mentioned lining up sometimes at 9, which would be the wide defensive end. So that's 330 pounds. They're going to try to move guys around, I think.
I think there's a degree of, one, they got to figure out the pieces they have and what they do well, and you can do that all day in practice, but till the lights come on, you don't know how it works under the lights, and you want to see how guys evolve from game to game. And I think the other part of that is just that's what they kind of need to be. Like, I don't think – obviously, people are very high on Daryl, and the potential is completely there for him to be a dominant player. He has to be a more consistent player. But I don't think there's a ton of guys on the defensive side of ball. Jeremiah Wilson's not one who I would put in that category, I guess. Earl Little, based on how the staff talks about him, I think I would put in that category. And Elijah Herring, I would put in that category. But after that, I think it's sort of like, who's our best guy for what we're trying to do in this moment with a variety of guys you can throw at it who are relatively comparable in talent. Like defensive line, Jason Jenkins, if he gets fully healthy and into the practice mode, yeah, I think he's a big piece of the puzzle, but a little bit behind the 8 ball because he's had the foot/Achilles, whatever it was, lower leg injury that has prevented him from being kind of full go for them. But he's a guy who I think has a real shot. Deontay McCray, someone me and you speak highly of, and I think are kind of betting on. And I think Deontay looks great physically. And
I don't want to bet on anyone that you're betting on ever again. Not after last year. Don't brag.
Anyone can also bust. We were always upfront about that part of it. But Deontay to me is a guy that I don't know why. I've been naturally high on him since getting him here.
He's a possible glue guy, like, because he can play multiple spots and he can allow you, if you want to go 3-man front, he's well versed in that. If you want to put him inside, like, I think he's very much so emblematic, and he's probably not going to start, but he's also going to play a lot too.
Right.
He's emblematic of what Tony White, I think, wants for his front on defense.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. He's kind of like Nebraska transfer that they have up there, James Williams. Sorry, I want to call him Jack for a moment there. I knew it wasn't Jack.
He might play Jack sometimes.
But I think James and him kind of similar type of what they can be. The ability
James
to
more
outside,
but
being a little bit bigger.
Yeah. Did you see the I know you weren't over with the defense, and
I could hear it. I didn't see it. I was shooting linebackers and DBs basically behind where the D tackles and D linemen were working on the wall there, but I could hear it, the chirping.
The chirping,
and there was a lot of chirping going on. That wasn't the sole thing said among that group. That group was kind of letting it fly at one another, I think, in sort of a friendly, respective, competitive manner of getting the juices flowing.
It was cool to see Daryl kind of step up in line and get after it. It was actually James Williams he got after. I was like, that's good. Like, those are two of your better players, and James seemed to handle it well too. Like, just that's a level of that's something that we haven't seen from Daryl in the past. Now, what it looks like when things get really rough and you're in the season, like, that's the next step. But, like, being cognizant of that, of him having to be vocal, I think that's a good step for you. It's all going to listen. If they're good on defense, it's going to be because Daryl Jackson's really good. It's because Jeremiah Wilson's energy just transcends through things, and then you need other pieces to kind of fall in place there. But those are the two big ones, I think, for whether this defense works or not.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I just think the defense is such a collection of pieces thing versus you need your best to be your best type of thing. But I also think that is more about the 22 than the 11. Well, I think the offense is a little bit more about 11. Like, offensively, if they have an injury at offensive tackle, it's going to make things ultra interesting very quickly. And truthfully, on the interior, I don't love their depth either. Rizzi and Otto give them a little bit more flexibility and safety there than I think they have at tackle. But, nobody has a deep offensive line nationally. FSU, I think, is very much there's a massive drop off from the first 5 to the next group. And I think that would majorly impact their abilities offensively if they get a bit in the weeds there as far as injuries piling up, which we know bigger bodies, it just tends to happen. It's sort of the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Defensively, I feel like it's more like they got 2 to 3 guys at this spot who are relatively comparable talent, and they're going to need 2 of them probably to play a lot, and they're going to kind of be used in a variety of ways. Feel that way a lot about the D-line and a lot about linebackers. Secondary is more about kind of got your 5 that you like, and then you need guys that definitely fill the roles behind them, but it's competitive. Like Quindarius Jones is probably your first backup corner, and he's a guy who at one point we thought could potentially be a starting corner, but you went and got Jeremiah Wilson, who will be a starting corner almost certainly. So that kind of changed the dynamics of that depth chart, and that strengthened you. But who will be the next guy after Q is sort of where you're at. And then safety, you got Earl Shaheem and Edwin sort of as your 3 is what you would pencil in, but is KJ Kirkland ready for prime time if he had to move up, which I think he is.
Jerry referenced yesterday that there was a few reps where he was talking about communication. He looked back and it was nonverbal communication with him and KJ, and that means those 2 are repping together. And
Yeah.
Jeremiah was, and they're gonna mix guys in and out. Like that's not a huge surprise, but it was interesting to me that those 2 were repping together because that would imply Kirkland was getting some work with the ones in that situation.
Yeah, and then like Ashlyn Barker, for example, is sort of a guy that we know what he is and who he is, and I think he fits into that rover idea as a reserve guy.
Probably a really nice backup rover for you.
Yeah, so like it's an element of that is what preseason is for me. And the other thing about the preseason is truthfully just defense, understanding the defense and everything that comes with it, and basically being able to do that quick enough where you can install a great deal and have a nice bit of variety to it. You don't want to walk into Alabama, which is obviously a significant game off the bat on August 30th, and be limited in what you can do in your playbook when your strength is probably your variety. And I think that all comes down to how much you guys on each side of the ball grasp everything the coaches want them to do, want the offense or the defense to be capable of doing. And that's going to be one of the more interesting things. Obviously, there was probably a great deal of install over 13 practices in the spring. The way things are conducted now, it allows a lot more of that than it used to in the sense that the coaches having time with players during the offseason. So I would presume they're in a pretty good spot. But there's a difference between knowing what the book tells you you're supposed to do and actually being able to go out there and execute and do it. And that's what they're going to learn over these next, they have what, like 19 or 23 more practices, whatever the number is. That's what it's probably going to be the biggest storyline to me of that, and staying healthy. Like there are positions where if they don't stay healthy, it greatly diminishes what their potential ceiling is, in my opinion.
So we're recording this on Friday. That's day 3 of camp. They'll go in, I believe, shells today. So you start seeing some contact. I think it's then 2 days in shells before you can go full pads. I'm not entirely sure. It's changed since I started covering, but it's coming up full pads soon. And just for some housekeeping, Tuesday will be the first scrimmage.
Correct.
And then they will be in Jacksonville Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. We'll have some, right? Does that sound right?
I think that's correct, yes. And it's only post-practice Thursday, Friday in Jacksonville, I believe, right? Isn't Saturday technically closed?
Yeah, well, so all the practices are closed, but in terms of availability.
I'm saying as far as post-practice, there's
no interviews. So I'm going to go home on after Friday. So yeah, that's kind of what the next week looks like. I don't know what else. Anything else on football right now? Got 30 minutes out of that.
No, I mean, August 1st rolls around, so obviously summer recruiting's kind of put to bed. And from an FSU perspective, other than DQ Forkpaw, I don't know if there's an official visitor that hasn't decided yet. The class is what it is in the sense of what they've satisfied, what they still need. They probably still need an offensive tackle. With the loss
we didn't talk about their offensive tackle commitment. We did not. So let's talk about Parks real quick.
Yeah, I mean, I like Parks. I liked Parks throughout the recruitment of Parks. He's a massive human. I think he's a legit 6'5". I don't know what he weighed in on his visit, but I would be willing to bet it's around 350 or so. Very, very large human. There is some reshaping that's certainly going to have to go on there. But all in all, I think he's a good football player. The question that usually comes up with him is, can he play tackle? Yes, I think he can certainly play tackle. I definitely think he can play tackle in a Gus Malzahn offense with what they're trying to accomplish. Probably more right than left at this stage of his production, ability, where he is as a player, but we'll also see how that body reshapes and how that changes things as far as the feet and ability to open up. I still think FSU is like everybody else for the most part in the country. They need to get another high level tackle. I think it's very important in this high school run that they bring two. They were involved with a guy like Bear Fretwell, who was at one point committed to Georgia Tech. He backed off and flipped to Alabama. I think that's probably put to bed and not going to happen. They're looking. We've heard about them kind of looking at JUCO ranks, stuff like that. So they're definitely looking for one. I don't think it makes sense to take another Chasten Brown type, who's a developmental type and a layaway guy. I think this needs to be more of a guy who you think can come in and be a first 2-year contributor for you, almost certainly at the line. Because next year, obviously portal will change this view, but currently the next year tackle for them is developmental guys, and whether or not they're hitting on those. And Lucas,
big year for Lucas Simmons,
right? Like sure. He's one at the top of the list there, and then you got John Daniels, Manasseh Tite, some others who are younger, who you're also trying to bring up, but like you need to basically have guys that speed it up further than the guys you previously got at those positions, in my opinion, from a high school rank. But I like Parks. I think it was a very good get. It was him and Wilson Zero down the stretch. Zero chose Auburn. I think out of those two, Wilson's the more talented of those two, personally.
I like Parks' upside better. I thought Wilson was higher floor. Well, we'll see.
But like earlier in the process, Mitchell Smith's a guy who I absolutely loved, who actually went to Vanderbilt. But like I think Smith was one of the best tackles they recruited in this process. I think he's a guy that the services are a little bit slow to realize how good he is.
Be interested to see how they expand the board, and I think some of it's going to be like I do wonder how instructive even this camp setting is going to be in terms of like how aggressive you are. Casting a wide net, because like does some like and Lucas Simmons look good.
If you're watching John Daniels, do I think if you're Herb Hand and Gus Malzahn and Mike Norvell, do I think John Daniels can help FSU in 2020?
Yeah, exactly.
And if the answer to that is yes, then that alleviates some of the pressure. If the answer is no, that obviously increases pressure. Now the thing is, you're probably not getting a high schooler who's going to just walk through the door and leapfrog a John Daniels unless you're spending a pretty buck this day and age. But there's a degree of like, that's what you got to start figuring out. And if there's not a high school, then it turns into a portal situation.
Mm-hmm.
And they're gonna be in the portal for O-line because they were so heavily in it for this group, and there's not a surefire next group. But it's a question of, is it for 3 or is it for 6? Like that's where I think you're right about camp, and then well into the season determining how desperate, for lack of a better term, do we need to be in the portal for an offensive line group.
Basketball got a big commitment, confirmed, not related to Christian Ponder. I know that was popular. But
Marcus Ponder, big boy, nicknamed Baby Shaq.
So I haven't watched, but I've seen photos. Can he play offensive tackle by any chance?
I definitely think he can. The arms are long enough. He's 6'11", legit. Eric Bossy shared a good breakdown of him as a player, but also official measurements. He's like officially over 6'11". I want to say 75-inch on the wingspan. Might have been more. I think it might have been 85.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And then the weight was just over 3 bills. He's been as heavy as like 320, 330. I think he's currently in the 305-ish range. He's a talented kid. He's an enforcer around the room. He's aggressive at finishing at the rim, which God knows I desperately want FSU basketball to two-hand dunk that stuff. And I think he'll be that. The reason FSU in part got him is some ties to the coaching staff. He plays for the brother of one of the current assistants for FSU, so that certainly helped them get their foot in the door. But FSU also busted their backside to make sure that kid understood that you're ultra valued by us, in the sense of any time they had an opportunity to be around him or to watch him in action, they were, and a majority of the time it was somebody like Luke. And that drives home that point. The kid referenced that multiple times in multiple interviews as being a key factor why he chose FSU, was because go where you want. You're wanted. You know you're wanted. But yeah, talented, big. He is capable of getting up and down the court, which is important because FSU is going to run up and down the court. After sitting through a practice last Friday, that was wholeheartedly reinforced. I mean, Luke hasn't been shy about what he wants to be offensively. A little bit run and gun, shoot a lot of threes, try to score pretty high, see if teams can keep up. They're going to try to do that. So you got to have bigs that are capable of getting up and down the court. And a guy like Alir Malouk, who's currently on the roster, clearly is built more like a guy who can run like a deer than when you look at Marcus Ponder, who that's a big boy. That's a kid that can play in the trenches on the football side. But Ponder can. He is capable of getting up and down and doing a good job with it. Played for Team Breakdown, a program that a lot of this staff is ultra familiar with. But yeah, excellent get. First true solely basketball commitment for that class, joining Jason Lopez, a football wide receiver who's also a very talented point guard or a guard. He can be more of a combo guard, in my opinion. But good start there. They're really busting their ass with their recruiting in that class. They've got an excellent group coming in for the Bama game. They actually have a young man who stepped on campus today, Gage Mayfield from Alabama, top player in Alabama for his class. Hurley Brutus, who I love from the Villages, who I know Michael Fly loves. Michael Fly was his first offer when he was at JU, and that's carried over to FSU. Make sure a kid knows you're loved. Hurley Brutus is supposed to come in, I think, for the Kent State game. Very talented kid. Those lists are going to grow. I know they're working on a pretty big group for East Texas A&M, which is a game in between Bama and Kent State. So yeah, they've hit the ground running. They've worked really hard. Watching the practice, yeah, basketball is a tough game. Heck, all college sports has turned into kind of tough to forecast because roster turnover, but basketball certainly is, especially when you only return a couple players, only a couple guys you're super familiar with outside of highlight tapes and what you've been told about them. But I do like what they've built there. I think they're going to be a competitive bunch. Now they're going to play a hell of a challenging schedule. So that's going to, squash some dreams, but I like what Luke is doing. Like, I feel like what Luke laid out in that March press conference when he got hired, what he went and did as a recruiter, what he's now done with the current team he's fielding, and what he is doing in future recruiting, it all plays back to his original words. And it's always good when it's kind of linear. And I think that's what it is.
I like that I gave you the window for a little bit of hoops talk.
I felt like hoops needed to be talked about. There's
I know you
fun,
did.
but watching last Friday in that practice was sort of like it got the juices flowing, and like Kobe McGee is a really good basketball player who strikes me as a really good guy to have on your basketball team. LeJay Jones can shoot it. Luke was shown a highlight to the team of them running an open gym, and he drained 9 threes. I think they were in a row. So like he's got that ability to be that guy. You got multiple guards with Martin Somerville and Robert McCray, who can be sort of the guys that handle the rock for you. You got returning pieces like AJ Swinton, who's done a real good job with his body this offseason, and Alir Malouk, who's added good muscle, which was a necessity for him as a very long, relatively thin guy, to be better players and be bigger pieces. And it's enjoyable to watch. There's not a piece of the roster where you're like, man, I don't know if this guy should be here. I think Chauncey Wiggins is probably the guy that's most awkward fit to what they're trying to do, just in the sense of knowing what he was at Clemson versus what I know FSU's trying to execute. But I also know that Chauncey is a very long, capable shooter who can open up the floor for you. And that's certainly something they're trying to execute. So I get why he fits. And to me, he is the most extreme piece to them. And that's not a negative. It's just, when you're picturing the pieces in your head and how they come together, Chauncey was one that I found to be the most intriguing. But even watching him in a practice setting, like, it makes sense. It is fun. I also like how he operates practice. It's a lot of ball in the court, get up and down 5-on-5, true basketball, understand the situation. Also putting in the idea of, extra passes, sets, how to get off guys, how to execute things that fit the elements of what you're trying to do offensively. And it was very, the pace was good. Like, there was a lot of basketball to it, and that's what it needs to be. I think this day and age of student athlete needs to be active in a practice more than informed in a practice. I think if you stop and teach too much, you lose your focus.
I like that I gave you a second window for basketball in your
I'm done.
answer. 1, 2. Quick buy or Sonone, we'll get out of
Sure.
here.
Brought to you by the Turner Group.
The Turner Group. All right, buy or Sonone. Believing that Jeremiah Wilson does not wait. 3, 2, 1. Sorry, Colin. Buy or Sonone. Does Jeremiah Wilson drink coffee?
I Sonone that. I believe the man wholeheartedly. Like,
That's an amazing amount of energy for.
I love Jerry. Jerry has quickly become one of my favorites. 1, great quote. 2, I just enjoy the energy. Like, it's there. 3, everything I've heard about him since he walked through the door is that, yeah, he really, like, he loves the game of football. He loves working hard at his game, but he's also an infectious personality. I would say those three things have been conveyed to us both by him and like Deuce Robinson talking him up. So yeah, I'm a fan of Jerry. I do think there's an element, and we'll see if it matters, but I do think there's an element of they landed a few guys via the portal personality wise who are desperately needed. And he and Deuce Robinson are at the top of that list, in my opinion.
I think Randy Pittman, with how he plays the game, would be
Yes.
another who comes to mind.
And
Yeah,
guys like Pittman, Stephon Thompson on defense, Adrian Medley on the offensive line, James Williams on the defensive line. They're all good in the sense of, one, I think personality wise they're fine, but two, they're also bridges to the systems. And I think that's been an assist for a lot of guys.
judging how pure talent is going to be cultivated is I'm finding myself a little gun shy with that just because of what last year was. Like they did have they had two guys drafted, right? And that doesn't sound like a lot, but that's more than half your schedule. And then you have like Daryl Jackson would have been drafted at some point of view. Like so you had enough to where you shouldn't have been anywhere near where you were. And I look at like where FSU's talent composite is and some of the opponents they're playing. Even like there was a graphic I saw the other day. I can't remember who put it out there, but it was the East West Shrine Bowl's like top 1,000 players in the
Yeah,
top.
I saw that too.
And Alabama's in the top right quadrant all by itself, which the
Yeah.
top right quadrant's usually the best side.
FSU's kind of smack dab in the middle.
But Miami, Florida, Clemson, all well ahead of you as well. And again, what it looks like, what motivations are, how it all works together is in this era, especially, is going to be very much so crapshoot. But my point being is, go ahead, Chris.
I was just gonna say, to add to that, yeah, I agree with you. I think last year the D line kind of fit that, and this year I think it's the O line. Like if it works, you're going to be good, and if it doesn't work, you're going to be in really, really big trouble. And last year with the O line, it didn't work, and they were DOA offensively so often that they weren't going to be competitive. They had plenty of issues, and it's not solely an O line issue, but there were instances that they were just they were DOA.
That's your ground zero for the offensive issues, and the offense was awful. When the offense is awful, the defense is going to use, unless it's a badass defense, and that was not a badass defense from personality, but it could have been a top 30, top 25 defense.
Yeah.
It probably should have been.
And there were elements of that defense that did improve as the year went on. Josh Farmer was a good football player down the stretch for FSU. Daryl was better as he went on. Omar was better as the year went on.
Yeah. I agree. That at least looked kind of functional at times. But so if you're going to go into the season as not having being in the maybe 60th percentile nationally for talent, and so that means you're probably going to be more games than not be the more talented quote unquote team on the field, but not overwhelmingly so. Guys like Jeremiah Wilson to me are going to be what can maybe have you overachieve. Like if this team gets back on, it's going to be because someone who himself is overachieved and with his physical tools and his personality, and that's kind of what you're banking on, is to win in the margins with those type of guys. So I mean, I love listening to him talk. He's a great quote. The energy is awesome. I hope he does well here. Like he's fun. He's what it should be. And it's college football makes it fun. Buyers to Known, sponsored by
the Turner Group.
Being surprised that practice was closed.
I also know that when the spring closure happened, I did not expect it to reopen. I don't expect it to reopen under Mike Norvell.
I agree. I did find the reaction of people either being surprised or being kind of celebrating it or having any strong reactions. Like, no, once it gets taken away, things don't get given back to you. I do wish that they were more transparent about that. I mean,
I thought if it was going to come back, it would come back now. But when we got here, it did not come back. I do not expect it to come back.
I was surprised that Jacksonville was not open, just because.
Yeah, I'm not complaining here, especially because I'm not going. You're the one who has to go. But like, I am surprised they even opened Jacksonville at all. I kind of thought that would be just a complete getaway for them. I think there's probably an element of you're going to Jacksonville, you want to give Jacksonville media the ability to do post.
They love Jacksonville media, don't they?
I abstain. I think that's what's going on there. But yeah, there's a degree of driving 2.5 hours to 2 practices to get 12 to 15 minutes is not the most valuable way of using our work week.
I did buy some the glasses with the nose and the mustache mask. We'll see if it gets here in time.
How many periods do you think you'll make it? 3?
With that?
Yeah,
maybe.
Suddenly you're hanging out in an air-conditioned state trooper car.
Oh, you think they would arrest me for loitering?
They just drive you off the premises. And then you can come back like Bobby Valentine in reverse.
Buyer Sedone, sponsored by
The Turner Group.
Oh God, I don't remember what it was. Sorry,
Well, I'll buy that. You're getting old.
All right, let's get out of here. I think that's a good stopping point. All right, for Chris Nee, I'm Brendan Sedone. This has been on the 3, 2, 1 on the bench. We'll talk to you guys later. Not sticking the landing. Oh boy.